Hi, this is Ed, back again with another supporter video this week as we journey into the CIA's heavy interest in remote viewing. What is all that about? Well, thank you to everyone on Patreon, of course. You keep this channel running. Thank you so much. Without you, it wouldn't happen, of course. So just thank you again for your support. Also, thank you to everyone on Steamer to upvote my videos now and again. That does keep the channel running as well. So let's just really get right into it. So this is regarding remote viewing. Now this is the term that the CIA or different government agencies used within the United States in order to describe some type of psychic technique of seeing things that that no one can actually view, at least with their known senses. There's many examples throughout history of people that claim to have these kinds of powers. In some instances, that's just they have a flash in their mind of something in the future. There's other people that have written entire books like Nostradamus there. In fact, you can even see them in biblical references here from the King James or the English Standard Version here of the Bible. He foresaw and spoke about the resurrection of Christ. Now, of course, in other passages in regards to something that's pretty different than having a flashback of a flash of the future, or maybe seeing something that hasn't happened yet, or knowing something that you can't see with your eyes. That's different than other things which are in the Bible, obviously are classified in different ways. For instance, the Bible has a negative connotation, a negative outlook on things like mediums or channeling. And that's very kind of clear. That's different, obviously. You're channeling in a spirit or something, changing your psychology or whatever. That's different to what we're talking about with remote viewing. But the Central Intelligence Agency, regardless on your opinions of remote viewing, were really, really interested in remote viewing at one stage. In fact, here, 2017, talking about all the documents that were declassified and regarding the CIA documents there. One was, a number of them was about Project Stargate, okay, which was this type of psychic school to try to create people that could see things from afar. Here's an independent article as we're just addressing some context here. The CIA files suggest that those in charge of the project did believe that they had some success. Just a little spelling error there I can see now from the Independent, which is a bit odd considering that is a few years old now. You'd think they would correct it, but hey, I'm not the pot calling the kettle black, okay? My spelling can be really bad. I'm slightly dyslexic. Project Stargate, of course, there's loads of documents there in the CIA archive. Here you can see one there in the URL up the top of the screen, and it's just riddled with these. In some cases, what makes these CIA documents interesting and regarding the whole entire debate about whether people really have psychic powers or not, no matter what your stance is the CIA applied a methodology to these psychic, or people that claim to have these psychic powers, which was a routine. It was a scientific structure. For instance, in some cases they'd show them a red light, they put snow beside their ear and things like that, and then they'd measure which resulted in different better functionality, and then they'd go in that functional direction. So there was a scientific overview to it, as well as a kind of rigorous process of fact checking and things like that. It usually involved two people. One person would know what a target is, the other person would be the remote viewer, so then they would remote view the actual target. Here you can see on screen there's some coordinates up the top. That is all the remote viewer needed, okay? They were written, these coordinates were assigned to this, the other people know what it is. In some cases it was randomized, so not even the other people knew what it was, but they would just look at those coordinates. So they're not really coordinates in the sense of locational coordinates. They're just, kind of mental coordinate, I guess, just a random string of numbers. And then they would look at it and then they'd write down what they see and associated with those numbers there. So remote viewing, of course, is another CIA document. You can see it on screen there if you want some extra details. But I do have a video coming up which will probably best give you the overview. You can always read some of these slides yourself. Let's have a look at this video. It's 2 minutes long.
The CIA's psychic spy program was called Project Stargate. It was based at SRI, the Stanford Research Institute. The project leader was senior research physicist Ed May. We set up our own test of Joe McMonagle's remarkable claims with a simple experiment. At an agreed time from his home in Virginia, McMonagle would attempt to remotely view a secret location we chose halfway across the world. McMonagle's task? To pinpoint where this man was at a given time somewhere in Europe. All he had to go on was a photograph of the man and his own psychic vision. He begins sketching.
Well, first thing I'm getting is sort of a I'm getting a sense of some kind of an overhang kind of a thing like this. There might be sun through a skylight. Lots of glass and light, shadow inside. It probably is adjacent to a either a subway stop or some kind of a train station. Within this complex is probably a chapel, maybe, or a small church within the complex itself. And
McMonagle got many elements of the location right. It was the ultra-modern Stansted Airport near London, England. But in spite of drawing something very like a jet engine, Joe didn't get the airplanes. But enough to make you wonder.
So there you are with pretty much a very short video which encapsulates the technique. Now, when the CIA was doing it, they were far more rigorous. The person would be in a room, you know, maybe the lighting conditions would be different, etc. Maybe it'd be red light. You know, so they had these different ways of doing it. It'd be soundproofed room, etc. So now just some extra little bit of background here in regards to all this. And you can see it on Wikipedia. I wouldn't bother reading the Wikipedia too much in detail. I have literally seen this page in regards to the Stargate project change multiple times throughout the years. Now, there used to be a passage there saying that the project had been moved to another agency, and it used to have a quote there from someone within the agency or someone high up and a link to some information. That's all gone, so it's been sanitized. That doesn't mean it's true, okay? But the main takeaway is the public narrative about the project is that it didn't bear any fruit, basically, so the CIA shut it down. Now, some researchers state that it moved underground to something else. I'll let you decide for yourselves because there's very little information here. So the project consisted of multiple different variations. It's not just called Stargate. As you can see, there's multiple different variants of it. Stargate was the 1990 to 95. Here you have Sunstreaked, which was 86, and then you have this Gondola Wish, which is 1977 to 79, and it was within the Army. Then it went to the DIA, and it was in the CIA as well. So this program was a response to the Cold War, because what happened is the Russians were heavily investing, or at least that's what it seemed like, from the Allies' position into paranormal research, into psychic powers and all these things. Literally, it looked like the Russians were spending a lot of money in this sector. This is from a report from the early 1970s there. So the CIA set up a program which literally lasted almost 20 years in order to research it. Now, in my opinion, something doesn't last for 20 years unless there's some berries that fall off the bush. Okay, 20 years is a long time to run a program with government funding through the Army, the CIA, the DIA, if it doesn't actually bear any fruit whatsoever. But again, the official narrative is it didn't. So here's number 4 here as we get into something interesting. So regarding the Russians and the Cold War, they are still invested in remote viewing. At least that is what is claimed now in this recent news report I'll cite in a moment. This here you see in the background is the name of a defense magazine. That's actually one of the covers there that comes out of Russia. It's run by the Ministry of Defense. So how does this tie together? Well, the Russian Defense Ministry claims troops are trained in telepathy in combat. Sky News, and this is on the 5th of April 2019, so only a few days old. Here's Business Insider from April the 4th. A Russian Defense Ministry report claims its elite soldiers can crush computers with their minds and read documents inside a safe after mastering telepathy from dolphins. Now, this was in a report called Super Soldiers for the War of the Future. And this was in that magazine I just named, which is run by the Defense Ministry there, or Russian Defense Ministry's magazine. That's the name of it. I won't even try pronouncing that name. So you can read more on screen, but they claim to be able to shoot down computer programs, burn crystals and generators, eavesdrop on conversations, or break televisions and radio programs and communications with only their minds. Okay, those capable of meta contact can, for example, conduct non-verbal interrogations. They can see through the captured soldier who this person is, their strong and weak sides, and whether they are open to recruitment. So if this had been published in any other magazine, no one would have made a big deal about it. But because it was in the Russian Defense Ministry's own magazine, and this is a report only a few days old, it was a big deal. I mean, they talk about like nuclear weapons or submarines and things like that. So here you have something pretty interesting. Here's Medusa magazine talking about it on the 4th of April, talking about this. According to the magazine operated there, it was all around the news. I'll let you read most of this by yourself, but the basic takeaway is just more of that information. They're a type of combat psychics, okay, that supposedly use paranormal tactics to help soldiers learn foreign languages. Russia also apparently has specialists who use telepathy to question prisoners and give orders to dolphins. Apparently they communicate with dolphins. So what does that all mean? Well, I'll go into some possible reasonings behind all this when we get further down the road. So is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. Decide for yourselves. Here's number 3. So we'll go to that Joe McGonigal individual that was featured in the video I just played, and we'll look at some more examples from him since he is one of the most famous remote viewers. Now on his uniform, it does not say his name, it says his name is Smith, but this is him here. Apparently according to the citation at least. So that's him back in his army days. I assume that he had a different badge on or something. Or maybe he had a different name or something. The Lawrence Livermore remote viewing session. This is one of his most interesting sessions and is regarding when someone gave him a random target that has said remote view this random number. And this is what he came. So it could have been anywhere in the world. And he actually ended up remote viewing Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, but he didn't know that until afterwards. Here was the sketch he made. So if all these documents from the CIA are correct, okay, so he drew this here, and he had no idea of what the target was. You can see the T-shaped building, etc., the line of trees, and this road on the northeast side there. This is what the actual target was revealed to after, and he seemed to have got a lot of the details. Here's a side-by-side comparison. You can see the trees running behind the background there, and this is from the CIA archive here. And you can see the road, that road there, and this road right there. That T-shaped building is right there, okay? And even got a number of the other details. Now, obviously there seems to be some kind of differences, but he seemed to get a lot of at least the coordination of it correct. Okay, he notes here that there's a small or something, many small buildings, I think he means, many small buildings over here. maybe too small to see, and he seems to have got that correct. But I'll let you decide for yourselves. What's most interesting to me is the fact that he got these trees here, and he got the location of the road in relation to the overview of the buildings. Here's a picture of him back, I think, in the late 90s, and we're going to go into some more esoteric and strange things here, because obviously people ask the question, what are some of the unusual things that he remote viewed, if he is credible, if it's all real? And I don't know if it is. Well, he remote viewed Mars, and I have a video on that. I'm not going to go too much into these screen caps here. You can read these for reference purposes. But he's basically saying there's pyramids on Mars, that they are strange because they're a type of room. They're actually there for sleeping, designed for sleeping, hibernation, and he states they're from an ancient civilization. They're an ancient people trying to survive. It's past their time and age. They are waiting for the return of someone sent to find a new home. What is that new home? Well, here is some information from the actual video of him speaking. Let's listen to what he actually said here.
They're an ancient people trying to survive. It's past their time and age. They're waiting for the return of someone sent to find a new home. Their world passed through the tail of a comet. I had a sense that their atmosphere was stripped away or destabilized when it passed through the tail of the comet. And that's a building, or what's left of a building on a sort of a plateau, and that's the drawing I did of the larger beings. What I think in actuality, there really are no such thing as Martians. What I think Martians are is us. I think we're descendants of the original inhabitants of Mars, and we're the ones that never went back.
So it's interesting as well because it's the old hypothesis, if you're familiar with ufology. A lot of people believe, abductees and things like that, that we are offspring of something else, okay? Now his hypothesis, I guess, is that we left Mars and colonized Earth, and we are the offspring in that sense. And the people from Mars, and this is blurred out, but that actually reads Martian, okay, a giant people. Of course, our actual myths and legends are filled with giants. I believe I've done videos about that. You can look into real life giants as referred to by the Smithsonian, for example, called the Heidelberg Man. Okay, that was where there was a group of people on our planet, and no, I did a Patreon video on this, it's very unusual, but they were all 7 feet tall. Now, that's a long way from Martians, obviously. This person will be like 13, 14 feet tall. At least, probably. If this person's 5 or 6 feet tall, you can double that, get to 12 or 13 quite easily. Now, even the Bible, for example, the Bible is filled with giants. The Nephilim, for example, were said to be giants, and we are the offspring of the Nephilim. Remember that in the Bible. Also Goliath, obviously, and David and Goliath, the story of David and Goliath. So there is lots of interest in these kinds of things. Now, is that, in this case, is regarding Mars, is that real? Hey, that would be pretty mind-blowing, and I have no idea, obviously, if that's real or not. It's interesting to entertain, but of course it leans on the validity of whether, if he, those documents from the CIA were all real, and he did have these capabilities. Does he have those capabilities? I don't know. But then there's many things, obviously, I don't know. It's pretty much most of reality. Now, I just want to get into this for number 2 here before I get into my opinions about remote viewing. Just into what science talks about reality itself, because science does say it's extremely strange. How is this linked to the phenomenon of remote viewing or psychic powers? Well, one of the largest debates in quantum mechanics is in regarding the observer effect. Whether the observer actually affects the experiments in regarding the double slit experiment in quantum mechanics. I can't go into it here, One, I know as much as a normie could probably know about it. I do read about it all the time, but I'm it'd take a longer video even in my normie language to explain it. In my primitive normie language, I am by no means someone, a physicist. But here we have from the BBC, the strange link between the human mind and quantum physics there. Now, obviously, the observer experiment has been talked about a lot. And it seems to show, at least a lot of people agree in some sense, it's a major question of physics, that the observer affects the experiment in regards to the double slit experiment, which shows you the phenomenon and how the particles choose where to go. Basically, the double slit experiment is basically shooting particles through a slit, and they show up as a wave or what's called a pattern on the background there, and the way you observe it changes the patternary outcome of the experiment itself in regarding subatomic particles there. So the background in regards to particles and what is referred to as an interference pattern, which you probably know a little bit about. There's many videos which you can look into this. But it does show that science takes it in one aspect very seriously, or at least a large group of scientists, that the observer in some way unknown affects subatomic particles. So that is quite interesting. Of course, it's one of the grandest mysteries of physics. Of course, here's Scientific American talking about it here. There was lots of articles, and I did go into a Scientific American article in regards to what is reality, given the new data from quantum mechanics. It was signed by a bunch of scientists saying that they had to change their viewpoint because reality isn't real in the classical definitions that we think of it as. It's affected by our people, or at least the observer, if anything, about quantum mechanics. Now, there are a lot of detractors for that say it's something else and that we can't understand it yet, so it just seems like that, obviously. But the human mind seems to play a role in many things. For instance, what about wisdom of the crowds, showing that the pooling of guesses about something regarding how many marbles are in a jar, you get the average of those guesses, and it seems to have high resolution on what's actually in there. It's kind of a shared ability to have access to higher knowledge based upon the larger groups of people. It's what makes humans amazing. Okay, singly we can get it wrong, but together we can get it right. Okay, if we come together. Now here's just something interesting, and just obviously you probably are aware I'm a Christian, but Jesus Christ talks a lot, as there's many religious leaders. If you're a different you have a different religious system like Buddhism or something, talk about how good the idea of good and evil, the idea of putting more good into the world, love thy neighbor, and these types of things. Now, if you look at society, even if you're an atheist, you probably come to the realization that chaos depicted from, let's say, random acts of violence that puts human beings into chaotic swings in society is a bad or a negative, as opposed to the positive of harmony, social groups that operate. And a lot of those social groups that operate really well, one dynamic is love and peace and kindness. They thrive within an environment through sharing their resources, taking care of each other. Okay, there's so many good things that can come from that. So, and all that bearing in mind, I actually went to an experimentation. I performed what was called the rice experiment myself. It's where you get jars and then you obviously disinfect them. You put them in a place where they're not going to get a lot of light or changes to the thermal conditions around them, or heat, okay? And then you put rice in them. Of course, you follow the best methodology you can within your apartment. So I'm not saying this is a lab experiment, but you put the rice, you boil the rice, and this comes down to, does water have like an energy, an invisible energy? I know this is getting metaphysical, okay, but I got the same results as this experiment. When I put positive on one jar and negative on the other, I found that the jar with negative on it just degraded really faster than the jar with the love and kindness written on it. Okay, and you can send your intentions into it if you feel it, if you want to go that far. But that's exactly what I found as well. So what does that say? It's so strange, it's even hard to talk about. You would not be able to talk about this with a normal person. You know, I performed a rice experiment. I mean, they'd laugh at you. But I can say, as someone that performed this experiment and went to my best abilities to do it so there wasn't any contamination, I got these same results, okay? And a lot of people around the world have. So it's like that age-old thing of the darkness, you know, versus the light. I know, obviously, my channels are named after that. And it's kind of like a weird kind of synchronicity how they got named. But it is that kind of feeling of the darkness and the light. Now, let's theorize for a moment that remote viewing may be true, okay? That there's some kind of invisible knowledge matrix which people can access with their minds. I mean, it's a bold claim. It's a bold claim, obviously. But the fact is, whether you believe that or not, it's not really, you know, you can believe what you want, obviously, but whether you believe it or not isn't the really what's the most interesting in regards to all this. What's interesting, and I've done a lot of videos on it, is the people that run the world believe it. The people that run the world believe that they can change the world or change things based on sending out intentions. Remember, a lot of the world is run by people that, you know, have knowledge of the occult. I mean, you can look at everything. I mean, I've done multiple different videos on that. Here, of course, is the reptilian symbolism there from the Pope's Audience Hall of the Vatican. They believe that if they send out certain intentions, then they can get what they want in return. Look at the Goddard Tunnel. Look at all these places. So whether you believe in, you know, whether this is real or not, the people that operate the world at the highest echelons of power, in my opinion, believe it 100%. Now, it's interesting, if you go to the mainstream opinion of the world, the public media will say you're a bunch of lunatics, do not believe anything like this is possible. They say prayer doesn't work, you know, don't pray. If you're a Christian, you're wasting your time, you're a lunatic. They always tell you this. Like what you say, your intentions don't matter. That's all they teach you at primary school, high school, college, university, is there's nothing you can say if you want to put intentions out there that will change the world. Now, I don't know if that's all real, okay? I believe in putting more love, trying to put more love and kindness in the world, you know, like the path of Christ, than I do in putting negative and hate in the world. But you can measure that via, you know, all kinds of different reasons. You don't have to be religious in order to measure it. But the fact is, the people that run the world believe it. Isn't that an interesting thing? And the mainstream media sell you the complete opposite of what the people that run the world believe. I just think that's a really interesting thing to contemplate. Now, let's get back to some possibilities in regarding all this, because that itself, what I was talking about, is a pretty deep rabbit hole. I mean, we could talk about that for an hour. How they, you know, obviously, how the people that run the world have a philosophy that the mainstream media tell everyone else doesn't exist. Very interesting. Okay, so here's number one, and it's spy versus spy. And I know that I've spelt versus wrong there. Actually, it's got I can't remember. I think it's just a small s after the V, isn't it? Or something like that, depending on where you are. The point is, there's two roads to think about this thing with. I think two of the most dominant tracks here. Of course, there's many others depending on how your optics. But one road is all of the things, and regarding remote viewing, you know, tangents of them are true. They could be true in this world. You know, it's connected to quantum mechanics, you know, prayer works. I think prayer works in myself. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so I have a different perspective. I'm trying to speak to the, you know, obviously people have different perspectives than me, so I'm trying to respect that, obviously. But the thing is, you know, you can go down that track, okay? Or you could come down another track down this road here, okay, which is just as valid. Now, this is a different track, and it's a possibility. Now, obviously, prayer actually goes down this track as well, and so does intention, okay? Because if you're kind and good and follow the path of Christ, it doesn't matter what track or road you go down, you always end up usually in a better place than if you follow a path of, like, you know, some pretty dark stuff. So actually I should correct that. It's either track if you if you believe in good and kindness, then. But that's not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about these other two tracks. The CIA really created a program that could do these things, or another track that it is something else. What is something else? Well, we have to look into the reality of the world as really spy versus spy, okay? It's always spy versus spy. So when any of these agencies put something public out there, or they leak certain things to make it look like they're doing something, they're talking to the enemy. Remember, it's a grand chessboard. It is literally a chessboard there, like Brzezinski stated. I can't believe his daughter actually is like running a television show. I can't believe that sometimes. But at the height of the Cold War, if you look at just intelligence resources, now the Russians say, or make it look like, and this is, you know, like making paper tanks, okay, hey, paranormal activity exists, it's real, it really works. Okay? It exists, it's real, it really works. Okay, so what does the CIA then do? So if you put these on a chessboard, or if you put these just on a chart or a graph, you know, the units of resources that it takes the, you know, Russian intelligence to create the perception that they're researching paranormal activity when they're not really, is, let's say, 1 unit. Whereas the CIA building a massive program in order to investigate it might take 5, 10, maybe 50 units. So you can win wars in asymmetric ways where you make your opponent use up their resources, you making them use up their resources is tying up their resources. So is it possible it's something like that? That it was really creating the perception that it's a real program. Now let's scroll back. I mean, honestly, I don't know. But it is interesting. Here's a recent article. This is only a few days old, actually. Where now they're claiming, or at least the journalist is claiming, that the Roswell incident in 1947 was literally a hoax designed by the Soviet Union. Maybe, maybe not. There is a lot of people there that believe it's a real incident. But I don't know. But you're going to get a lot of this these days. Okay? So the main thing is the takeaway, I think. I'm sorry I couldn't give you anything definitive. Is the question whether all the information laid out in remote viewing is legitimate or not. Okay, you do have 2 paths on the road to go down there, and I'll let you decide which one. But it is a very complicated matrix we live in. Reality gets more complicated with each day that goes by now. It never seemed to be like this, but it is now. Anyway, I hope you liked the video there as we took a wander through the CIA, or at least this government program regarding remote viewing. And thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your support on Patreon. Thank you to everyone else that supports my channel there on Steam and DTube as well. But without my patrons, of course, I couldn't do this. So just thank you so much for that. If you have any ideas for special topics, throw them in the comment section under this video and I will take a look at them. Okay, we'll have another investigation coming next week. In the meantime, of course, this is Ed from the Outlight channel. Stay safe and I'll see you all later.